Hello, welcome to #1 TV station for news and updates. I am your news anchor Shazmin Khan, taking you through this session. Please do not forget to follow us on our YouTube channel, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. With me I have today's headlines, which are: the Empress emblemed heart arrives in Brazil. NASA telescope captures incredible images of Jupiter. Trump seeks to block FBI from reviewing Malago documents. Call for South Korea to investigate child adoption to Denmark. Somali Prime Minister derives alshabab after hotel siege. Burundi sends troops to the DRC for regional peacekeeping force. Bangladesh cuts schools office hours to save power amid the crisis. Mali appoints interim replacement for ill civilian prime minister. Please stay tuned and wait for the news in details. The Empress emblemed heart arrives in Brazil. The preserved heart of Brazil's first emperor, Dom Pedro I, arrived to the country's capital, Brasilia, to mark Brazil's 200 years of independence from Portugal. Let's hear more information from our news reporter, Shazmin Khan.
Empress emblemed heart arrives in Brazil. The preserved heart of Brazil's first emperor, Dom Pedro I, arrived to the country's capital, Brasilia, to mark Brazil's 200 years of independence from Portugal. The heart arrived in a flask of formaldehyde and was said to be welcomed with military honors before it is put on display for the public at the country's foreign ministry. The preserved organ will stay in Brazil through the country's Independence Day before being returned to Portugal. Alan Coyle, the Brazil's foreign ministry chief of protocol, said the heart will be received like a head of state. It will be treated as...
NASA telescope captures incredible images of Jupiter. The world's newest and biggest space telescope has released photos showing unprecedented views of Jupiter, the solar system's biggest planet. Let's have more details from Shazmin Khan.
NASA telescope captures incredible images of Jupiter. The world's newest and biggest space telescope has released photos showing unprecedented views of Jupiter, the solar system's biggest planet. Scientists on Monday released the shots captured by the James Webb Space Telescope in July, showing Jupiter's northern and southern lights. Jupiter's great red spot, a storm big enough to swallow Earth, stands out brightly alongside countless smaller storms. One wide-field picture is particularly dramatic, showing the faint rings around the planet, as well as two tiny moons against a glittering background.
Trump seeks to block FBI from reviewing Malago documents. Lawyers of Donald Trump have asked a federal judge to prevent the FBI from continuing to review documents. Let's have more details from our news reporter, Eric.
Trump lawyers asked judge to temporarily block FBI from reviewing documents recovered from ex-president's Florida home. The search of former U.S. President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate area this month marked a significant escalation in the investigations he is facing. Lawyers for Donald Trump have asked a Florida judge to prevent the FBI from continuing to review documents recovered the area this month from the former United States President's Florida home until a new special master is appointed to inspect the records. The request was included in a court filing on Monday, the first by Trump's legal team since the search at Mar-a-Lago on August 8 that takes a broad aim to the FBI investigation into a discovery of classified records from the state. The motion filed in federal court in the West Palm Beach, Florida, also asked investigators to return any item outside the scope of the search warrant. News by Eric MRI.
Call for South Korea to investigate child adoption to Denmark. About 200,000 South Korea children were adopted by foreign parents over past 6 decades, mainly in Europe and the US.
About 200,000 South Korean children were adopted by Korean parents over past 6 decades, mainly in Europe and US. Dozens of South Korean adoptees who were sent to Danish parents as children in the 1970s and 1980s have demanded the South Korean government investigate the circumstances surrounding their adoption, which they say were corrupted by practices that falsified or obscured children's origins. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission in the South Korean capital Seoul have up to 4 months to decide whether to accept the application collectively filed on Tuesday by the 53 adoptees in Denmark. If the commission accepts the request, it could trigger the most far-reaching inquiry into foreign adoptions in South Korea, which has never truly come to terms with the country's child export. None of us are orphans, said Damola, lawyer and co-head of the Danish Korean rights group, as it describes the group's members who filled the application to investigate on Tuesday. A lot of papers, the Koreans said at the time, have stamped papers that say people were found on the streets. He said, if you do a little bit of math, that would mean that from the 1970s and 1980s, Seoul would be flooded with baskets and with children lying around in the streets. Basements will be filled with lost children, reports police statement. Mola, who was adopted to Denmark in 1974, said about 50 more of group's members are expected to join the application and that are plans to return to South Korea with their files in September. News by Eric, MRU TV.
Somali Prime Minister decries alshabab after hotel siege. Somali's Prime Minister has promised accountability after a deadly Mogadishu hotel siege by alshabab, calling the armed group Children of Hell. Let's have more details from our news reporter, Sharifa Mohammed.
Children of Hell. Somali's Prime Minister decries alshabab after hotel siege. Somali's Prime Minister has promised accountability after a deadly Mogadishu hotel siege by alshabab, calling the armed group Children of Hell. Hamza Abid also called on Monday for Somalis to unite against the Al-Qaeda-linked group, which has been waging a blood rebellion by Horn of Africa nation for more than 15 years. He was speaking after visiting a hospital treating victims of the bomb and gun attack on the Hyatt Hotel, which the health ministry said killed 21 people and wounded 117 others, and more than 100 people, including women and children, were rescued during the siege.
Burundi sends troops to the DRC for regional peacekeeping force. There are more than 120 armed groups active in the DRC, driving long-standing conflict in the country. Let's have more information from our news reporter, Sharifa Mohammed.
Burundi sends troops to the Democratic Republic of Congo for regional peacekeeping force. There are more than 120 armed groups active in the Republic of Congo, driving long-standing conflicts in the country. Soldiers from Burundi deployed to the troubled East African Democratic Republic of Congo as the first part of currently created East African Regional Force to respond to crises. The deployment was confirmed by the Democratic Army spokesman, Lieutenant Mark Elango, who said the mandate is to attack down all foreign and local armed groups in order to restore peace in the Minori region bordering Rwanda and Uganda, where dozens of rebel groups operate.
Bangladesh cuts schools, office hours to serve power amid crisis. Schools to close on additional day. Governments and offices shorten work hours to reduce electricity usage amid the concerns over rising fuel prices. Let's hear from our news reporter, Morgan Moses.
Schools to close an additional day. Government offices and banks shorten working hours to reduce electricity usage amid the concerns over rising fuel prices and the impact of the Ukrainian war. Concern of fuel price. The reduced hours took effect on Wednesday in Bangladesh. Most schools closed. The cabinet minister, Kanda, said that the government offices and banks will cut their working days to 7 hours from 8 hours, but private offices will be allowed to set their own time. Supply disruptions caused by the Ukrainian war have led to increase in the world prices for energy and food. Bangladesh has been taking measures in recent weeks to raise pressure on its declining foreign currency reserves. Last month, fuel price was raised by more than 50%. The government says it is exploring options to get cheaper fuel from Russia under a special arrangement, but the government said it is necessary to cut losses amid rising international fuel prices have taken place in the recent weeks, and the government said domestic prices will be adjusted after international prices. The news was brought to you by Moses Morgan's Emerald TV.
Mali appoints interim replacement for ill civilian prime minister. The Malian military government has appointed a colonel as the interim replacement for the country's civilian prime minister, who has been admitted to the hospital. Let's have more details from our news reporter, Moses Morgans.
The Malian military government has appointed Colonel Abdullahi Maiga as the interim replacement for the country's civilian prime minister, who has been admitted to the hospital. Maiga is also the government spokesperson, as well as its minister of territorial administration and colonization. His appointment was announced in a decree read on the state television on Sunday. He provisionally replaces a veteran civilian politician, Konguyo Kolala. Maiga, aged 64, who was named premier after the soldier had took power in August 2020, carried out a second coup in May 2021. The West Africa's main political and economic bloc has been pressing Mali to respect its commitment to hold presidential and legislative elections following 2020 military coup, since the news leadership has promised to organize a democratic elections in 2024. The news was brought to you.
Thanks for tuning in.